Hey, Saunder, welcome to the Virtual CMO podcast. I'm very glad you could join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to chat more.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. We talk a lot about digital marketing on this show and strategies there and around paid advertising. And I'm really interested to pick your brain on this topic because I think a lot's changing out there. Your company's called Disruptive, right? And I think there's a lot of disruptive forces going on in advertising right now. And I'm curious, when you look at the marketplace, at the landscape of just what's going on in the digital advertising world, what do you see? I mean, what is really disruptive right now?
Yeah, I think what we've seen recently is a lot of saturation on Facebook, which is starting to cause a lot of other players to be more relevant. So think of, Spotify advertising, Hulu, LinkedIn. We're seeing a lot of, B2B businesses advertising more and more there. So yeah, I think when there just becomes a saturation point and things become more and more expensive, it's usually an opportunity to figure out other channels that perform better.
I know it's hard to generalize because every business is going to be a little unique. Their target customers are going to be located in different places. But have you seen a trend sort of away from traditional web advertising and more towards mobile or ads within these platforms that you're talking about? Or are you finding that each is still very relevant just depending on that target audience?
Yeah, good question. I would say they're still very relevant. Google is still our biggest channel, and that's after 6 or 7 years of introducing social. So Google still for us is the king just because it is so bottom of the funnel, and intent is so good there. And then as far as mobile goes, the platforms do such a good job of just optimizing for mobile just within the platform. And so strategies tend to not change that much. Now, I will say when you're doing video ads, that does change a lot. That's where we tend to go more the 1-to-1 ratio versus the traditional 16:9, or you can do like a 4:3. So these are your aspect ratios. So a 1-to-1 just looks good on mobile and desktop. So it's a good like universal one.
I know we're recording this episode in early July, and I just read an article yesterday where they were saying that because of Apple's changes to the opt-in tracking, cross-website tracking, that a lot of digital advertising dollars are now being focused on the Android platform because advertisers aren't being able to track the effectiveness of their ads across multiple channels the way they were before. Do you think that this is a blip as people just figure out new ways of doing that tracking? Or do you think that this is going to force maybe companies like Apple to rethink some of those policies?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, just a very interesting time right now with these changes. I definitely think we are moving more towards a privacy first world. And at the same time, I would say I'm very guilty of this. I feel very pot committed when it comes to cookies and privacy. And it's like everyone already has all my data and info, and it just, feels like a hassle to have to almost hit the reset button on all of that.
Yes.
And so, we've seen about a 2 to 3% dip since Apple came out with iOS 14.5 on Facebook.
A dip in spending, you mean?
No, just a dip on more or less your conversion tracking. So
Okay.
your end-to-end results, and just not being able to have full attribution like we had before. And so, I think it will be interesting. How Apple gets by this is by more or less uploading their algorithm directly to the device. And that's where all your personalization and preferences happen. And so it feels like, this is Facebook just hit $1 trillion market cap. So it's $1 trillion problem for them to solve, and combine Google, we're probably talking closer to 2 trillion. And so it feels like that's probably where things will start to move, is maybe a more personalized algorithm on everyone's phone. Now, I think we'll kind of see how Apple wants to play there. I saw a tweet actually yesterday that a lot of executives at Apple are almost calling war on Facebook and going after them. And so it'll be interesting just to see how it all pans out.
It wasn't that long ago when the only thing that you could really look at were Nielsen ratings and subscriber numbers, right? You had very little data about, where your advertising was going and how it was being, absorbed by the target audience. And in many ways, we've become spoiled as digital marketers. There's so much information that we've had access to that it does feel like the tap is starting to be turned off a little bit, but we've been spoiled.
Yeah, 100%. It's been great that we have this data and it's first party and right there. And obviously the platforms tend to overshow or exaggerate, I guess, really what the data is, just with retargeting and different things. But it's still been nice to have access to all that data.
Yeah. Well, and I think especially in the B2C world, right, there are so many different platforms that you can use, whether they're the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the TikToks, Snapchats, all that, or, just places on the web where you can go to put your ad. But in the B2B space, when I talk to clients, it's often a little bit more frustrating for them because they're trying to figure out where their buyer is hanging out. And, for personal use, they're probably checking Facebook and doing those things like everybody else typically does. But for more business focused, it seems like their mind just goes to LinkedIn and that's where it stops. When you work with B2B customers, how do you help them sort of get their head around the choices that they have on where they can put out their message?
Yeah. Being a CMO of a B2B company, I can speak from firsthand experience and with our clients. We tend to maximize as much of Google as we can. And we do that with end-to-end tracking. So we understand what keyword is actually generating closed deals, because you can get a lot of clicks and traffic that just doesn't convert from Google as well. And in the B2B space, it tends to be very expensive. And then, another great avenue that is outside of platform is, sponsored listings. So like your G2s, and really just maximizing and rating there. That just tends to be at some point where someone's going to end up in the buyer journey and just comparing and making sure they're making the right decision. If not, going directly there just to search for solutions. So maximizing platforms like that is great. And then, as far as retargeting goes, we say retarget everywhere you can. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and you're right. Even, if someone who's been to your website is on Facebook at night, they're probably not in the best buying mindset. And, we also think that's a good opportunity usually for them to click on it and, save that article in their tab, or you can always retarget them again based on time on site to get them to come back. So, I would say that's, as far as a paid strategy goes, typically where we like to start.
I like that you brought up things like G2 Crowd or Trust Radius and the Gartner sites. There are a lot of them out there. And of course, that's a challenge as well, right? Which one do you go to? Do you go to them all? Are you paying? Some of them, you can pay and have your listing show up at the top. Others, you've just got to work to try to get those reviews up there. So you'll be in whatever they term their magic quadrant, so that you show up near the top. How do you advise clients there? Do you say select one or two, or do you think you've got to have a presence on all of them?
I think eventually definitely getting a presence on all is beneficial. And I think where to start is, I would start with your highest value keywords. And so, for us, that would be like top PPC agency. And then I just look and see, okay, which ones are ranking at the top. And so if you're, whatever industry you're in, I would just essentially Google that term, and just see where you're showing up. And so if that's G2 Crowd has the number one spot there, that's probably where I would invest, because they're probably getting the most organic traffic there. And so that's what I would recommend.
I think that's an interesting thing that you brought up, because oftentimes I think people look at that and say, well, you've got to go to the G2 site. You've got to, look around for your solution, see what it's rated. But actually, a lot of traffic that goes to G2 is coming from Google, right? They have done very well with their search engine optimization. So their listings tend to show up very high in the rankings for certain keywords like you're talking about. And that's how people end up on G2, not necessarily going to the site and doing a search there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think, that's more or less how they've they started and how they've created this monster is through, SEO. And they, now do a very great job across the board with their digital marketing. But yeah, at least that's what we're seeing for the keywords that we more or less want to rank for. And I just think we're getting kind of to this age of transparency and really, I guess, more like user generated content. And for B2B, yeah, sure, there's like case studies, but a lot of people tend to not love case studies because they know you're going to show your best foot forward or put your best foot forward. And so we love the third party validation of like a G2 or a Clutch or, these other ones that you've mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. And I've seen some good results come from those. Their cost varies just depending on what kind of a relationship you have with them and what kind of leads you want. But yeah, it can be very valuable, especially I think in the B2B space. And you also talked about the importance of retargeting. And I think a lot of businesses miss that opportunity. We certainly see it a lot in the B2B space. You go look for that pair of shoes on Macy's site, and next thing you know, you've got shoe ads popping up all over the place, right? But I think a lot of businesses miss that opportunity. So if somebody came to your firm and said, hey, I want to start a retargeting campaign, walk me through what that looks like for a business that is new to doing retargeting ads.
Yeah, so we tend to like to focus on 3 stages of the funnel, which I think most people are familiar with, but top of funnel, mid funnel, and bottom funnel. And we like to define those stages usually by how they're interacting with the site. So a top funnel audience would be someone who's visiting the site. Maybe they've come once or twice. That would be very top funnel. Probably have come to blog content. Maybe they saw an ad for an ebook. But that's what we would consider very like top funnel. So very introduction to the brand. Middle funnel would be someone who's maybe opened up a form, but hasn't converted, or maybe they visited the site 4 or 5 times. And then bottom funnel would be, similar like form engagement, but has been to the site, probably 8 or 10 times. There's also other tools you can use like Clearbit or Zoom Info that allow you to really segment your audience based on, company size or industry. And so that adds another layer of personalization you can add into your top, middle, and bottom funnel ads. And then as far as content goes, for top of funnel, we like to just continue to put out blog posts and helpful, I'd more call it, I guess, value content. So at that point, you're typically not wanting to show, come be a client of Disruptive or come be a client of, whatever company, you're in. And so, yeah, we tend to focus on value, whereas when we get to bottom funnel, it's, that's where we're highlighting more of our case studies, or that's where we're highlighting more of our, still content. I would just say maybe more brand focused content. So like, recently we helped consult a client on their website redesign, and we don't do that ourselves. We just, that was a good like value thing for us based on conversion data we were seeing and testing and helping them optimize. And so just more, I guess, highlighting the partnership aspects.
Okay. And then even for a B2B company, you suggest that people do the retargeting even off, things like Facebook or an Instagram, more sort of consumer focused channels, just to get that message out there, even in front of people when they may be, just surfing for leisure? Yeah,
100%. And I think that's where the content really matters based on where they're at. Because if you're just able to give them more valuable content, it's not necessarily an annoyance, right? You want to keep an eye on your frequency and make sure they're not seeing the same ad, probably more than 3 times. And so that's maybe the one caution I would give. But yeah, they've been to your site, they've shown some interest, and who knows, they may have been to 3 or 4 of your competitors as well. And so just staying top of mind and being relevant and really focusing on value, I think is a big differentiator.
What's your view on account-based marketing platforms, something like a Terminus, where you're actually targeting people at certain companies with these same type of value ads to try to pull them into to your site? Have you seen some pretty effective campaigns through account-based marketing strategies?
Yeah, we have. I would say So account-based marketing, I'll probably call it ABM, the acronym here. But, I would say it's very hit or miss. And I would say it's very hit or miss based on expectations. I think most people want to see it working in 3 months, where we found it typically takes 1 to 2 years to be working and to get people in the funnel. And I think that can also vary depending on the industry you're in or what you're selling and what the buying cycle looks like. So if most companies are in a 12-month contract, then you should probably assume you at least have, a 12-month test period, of testing it out and seeing how it works. Where, Adobe is one of our clients and we manage a lot of their LinkedIn spend. And that's all we do for them is ABM, and they have their lists, and that's the only people we advertise and market to are people on their lists. And so we're able to track through Adobe Analytics how many contracts we're actually influencing and how many of our pieces of content they've seen through our advertising. And so that has been very effective, but that's an Adobe, right? And they have a very recognizable brand. And so that's more or less what you're going up against, is educating during that, let's say 1 year period, as well as selling them on why they should switch to you. And so I think that's more or less, I guess, the caution I would throw out with ABM is it works. You just have to have the right expectations to go along with it.
You're so right too about recognizable brands. They have a distinct advantage because you don't sort of have to sell them or educate them on the brand itself. They can jump into a little bit more about some of the value that their products are creating or offering. But if you're an unknown brand, you sort of have to establish that brand presence as well, which does take some time.
Yeah, a lot of time.
So when you get new customers in, especially customers that may have already engaged on some sort of a Google strategy, maybe they're doing some PPC, or maybe they're doing Facebook ads or whatnot, what are some common mistakes that you see people making? I know people can spend a ton of money on Google very quickly if they're not careful. So what do you see as people making, just little simple mistakes that are pretty common across clients?
Yeah. I would say probably the most common mistake are people accepting the changes Google's recommending.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, Google wants you to spend more and more money, right? That's what they're incentivized by. And so, and not saying not all their recommendations are bad. And so, I would say that's one of them. And I think that ultimately ties to end-to-end tracking and just understanding what keywords are actually converting. And so whether you're using, Salesforce as your CRM or HubSpot or Zoho, whoever it might be, just making sure you have the right tracking in place to really understand where your, SQLs, SALs, ops, and ultimately closed deals are actually coming from. To me, that's usually what a lot of companies are missing. They're typically tracking like their MQLs, but that's kind of it in platform. And so, Google's actually done a great job, similar to what Facebook has done, of being able to optimize for conversion events within your CRM. And so I think that's usually where most people fall short, is the tracking and then accepting changes, or maybe, going a shotgun approach for too long instead of optimizing, more snipering in on the ones that are performing. So probably those three things.
Yeah, campaigns can just sort of sit on autopilot for a while, keep spending money without really ever taking the time to go back and seeing what's working, what's not, which ones can you get rid of, which ones are maybe should you put some more money behind. And when you talk about tracking, one of the things that I've seen is that, people will spend money on certain keywords and then they will take them to some generic page. They won't have created good landing page content that really helps, convert that lead once they get it. Do you see this as a big problem as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, a lot of people will just take their leads to a homepage, right? Yes. Which typically is more like a branded page versus like a solution page, or, and so, I think that's a huge missed opportunity. I think, we're not seeing it as much now as we were like 7 years ago. And I think there's just been a lot of good solutions. You have Unbounce, you have Squarespace, you have a lot of just tools now that you can use to easily populate a landing page. HubSpot does it. Salesforce has some ways you can do it. And so, yeah, I think, and it still is a very big pain point because a lot of companies, especially newer companies, don't have the time, right, to create a landing page. And so they just say, well, our homepage is good enough, so we'll just send them there. And I can resonate with that. I mean, it's hard to prioritize everything. And, I think sometimes you definitely need to get to the 80% completed before turning things on.
Have you seen better success with some of the tools? Like I know Facebook offers, lead capture right within the ad itself, so you don't have to push people to a landing page with some of their lead forms. Do you recommend that people do that? Is that shown to be more effective because it's less friction, or do you then lose the ability to really drive people to your website and then have them explore around some more?
Yeah, great question. For companies that maybe have, it tends to work better, I guess, for B2C companies where they're looking for like a lower cost per lead. I mean, everyone wants a low cost per lead.
Sure.
It's great at generating quantity and tends to not generate quality. Mm-hmm. And one way we've been able to make it work for ourselves is through ebooks and for our clients. And so it's an easy way for someone to download an ebook right through the ad instead of having to go to the landing page. And then you can just use, like a Zapier that connects to your CRM or marketing automation software that just sends it directly to them. And then you have all their info that way. And so that tends to have worked the best. Now, when they first introduced it 6 years ago, I mean, it was an amazing tool and we were seeing great results. I just think, maybe it comes back to that privacy or trust. We're not seeing it be as effective as we were when it first came out. So,
yeah, I can believe that. I mean, privacy is definitely in people's minds. It's in conversation daily in the news. And I do think people have looked at it. I mean, it's pretty typical for businesses when they have these forms, right, that people are using kind of dummy email addresses because they don't want to give away their most cherished email address, right, to some company. And I think even in the next Apple update, they're going to make that even easier to create sort of unlimited sort of random addresses so that you don't actually have to give away some of your information. So marketers have to work around that, but it just makes a little harder to tie things together sometimes.
Yep, I agree with all of that.
Yeah, privacy is here to stay. It's not something that's going to go away tomorrow. And, you talked earlier a little bit about content types and this creator economy that we're in right now. Have you really seen an impact, too, in the use of video in advertising? Where does that sort of fit in with what people are doing today?
Yeah, I would say video is definitely the preferred content. So yeah, I mean, it's huge. And, we're seeing with a lot of our clients across every industry, B2B, B2C e-commerce, B2C lead gen, that user generated content is what performs well. And I think there's ways it needs to be organic. I think going back to just that trust, people don't want like a full production, like you've brought in your customers or clients, and you're doing like a documentary, interview kind of, mini doc, whatever you want to call it, where it just feels like almost like tacky. And of course they're going to say positive things. It's a lot better when you can incorporate, other members of your team that are, so if that's like a CX rep or, a customer service rep or something that's actually interacting or engaging, or an account manager with your customer or client, and just keeping it organic. Or, if it's more B2C, then it's actually showing like an unboxing or, a try on or things like that. But I think just almost like bad video quality is not bad, but, just like your front camera versus your rear camera, right? Like, I think just making it just look authentic and real is what is really working right now. I think people are just kind of done with like the big video productions, and don't get me wrong, I guess there's a time and a space for it. They just tend to not perform as well, and they're way more expensive to produce. And so I think a lot of people, tend to get intimidated by video because they see these, big dollar science productions. I think most people like jump to like a commercial or Super Bowl or, whatever it is versus, just keep it simple. Film on an iPhone. It doesn't have to be like a DSLR. I mean, and, there is a time and a place for it.
Well, we all forget, that these cameras have gotten so incredibly good in our phones, that the quality of video that comes out of them is the equivalent to what used to be a production quality video just a couple years ago. So yeah, you're really not taking that much of a step backwards, but there is something much more authentic about it. And, I guess the final area that I wanted to really get your thoughts on was around that same topic of video. How should businesses view YouTube and being able to run videos or advertisements on YouTube as pre-roll videos or insertions in the middle of other content? How do you view video or YouTube as a platform?
Yeah, YouTube is huge. And we've seen a big uptick the last, I'd say probably 2 or 3 years. And that's just becoming a great place for long form content. I mean, you have at least this up and coming generation. I think more my generation is using it for how to fix things in the house or, things like that.
Sure.
And I think we also subscribe to other hobbies and things as well. But we kind of have this rising with TikTok and Snapchat and even Instagram, just very like short form content, very just like quick to the point, 6 seconds, to 30-second video, where YouTube is where people are going to really like sit down and consume lengths of a video. I don't know the stats of like what's the average duration of someone who goes to YouTube, but I would anticipate if someone's casually going, it's probably a couple hours. And so getting your video in front of them is very beneficial. And I think just a good way to stay top of mind. I think retargeting is a great place to start and see how it performs. And then as you start to see more and more success with different video there, I think that's when you start to create more of your targeted pre-roll ads and things like that.
As we've discussed all of these things today, I'm sure if you are a business owner that really hasn't done much of this at all, you listen to all the different things that you could do, whether it's, getting on G2 Crowd or doing something on YouTube or PPC or Facebook ads, and your mind starts to melt, right? There's a lot of things that you have to not only learn, but spend money on. And that's why I'm such a big fan of bringing in experts, people who really know what they're doing, to say, hey, just tell us what your budget restrictions are. We'll put together a plan because we know what works and we can help you execute it. And I know that's part of what you guys do at Disruptive. So I would love it if you could just give the audience a little bit of an overview of the company and what you guys can do for businesses.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so Disruptive Advertising is about a 160-person agency. We have about 500 clients. And typically our clients are spending, our average client spends about 30 grand a month, but we tend to work with clients who are spending 5K up. And the services we offer, we started as a Google paid agency. We're one of Google's top agencies, top 10 agencies, I guess is what we can say there. And then, we've since then grown to a lot of other paid channels. So all the paid social channels. And then we also do conversion rate optimization, landing page testing, and email marketing. So once we're getting leads in the door, making sure we're, nurturing them and getting them to be customers, or, once they become customers, making sure we're helping through the onboarding program there. So yeah, that's Disruptive Advertising. Our mission is to grow together. And, to us, that means, hopefully out of the gate showing some great business results, but evolving the relationship to actually being partners and almost being a part of your team. And we like to visit our clients and have working sessions. And like I said, help on things that we actually don't provide as a service, but that helps you be a better business and get the customers you're looking to get.
I love that. And where can they find you online?
So you can find us at disruptiveadvertising.com. You can, find me. You can email me if you have any questions or thoughts, Saunder@disruptiveadvertising.com. And then all social media is Disruptive Ads. So you can find us there as well.
Perfect. And I'll make sure that we all have all that stuff linked in the show notes. But again, I think this is so important. Advertising is a critical aspect of a marketing strategy, and you can spend a lot of money experimenting on your own, or you can bring in the professionals who can really help you put that money to work in the most effective way. And so I'm such a huge advocate of bringing in those professionals. Sure, it's going to cost you a little bit of money, but you're going to save a lot too, because it's a big learning curve. There's a lot that you have to know to make this successful.
Yeah, we've been through a lot of the pain and learnings and growth, with a lot of different clients, and so I think there's definitely benefits in working with an agency that aligns with your goals.
That's great, Saunder. I really appreciate you having or being a guest on the show today. It's been a fascinating discussion. There's certainly a lot to talk about in this realm, so I appreciate you coming on the show today to talk about it.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was great chatting and thinking through where marketing's going and B2B and everything else.
Perfect. Thanks. We'll talk to you again soon.
See ya.